Hello, everybody, and welcome to the channel. My name is Disco Soup, and today we are going to be taking a look at Instant Starship, which is a game from DNGN Club. I hope I'm saying that right. You may know them for their hot new game, DNGN and Dragon, or actually it's DNGN plus Dragon. But today we're looking at Instant Starship, which is a neat little thing. I'm going to take 1 second to post a link to the video. Make sure I'll tell them I'm not a robot. Alrighty. So, Instant Starship. I have to say, I've really been drawn into this game. My friend Porthos, who is the author of Space Aces, turned me on to this one. And I've been aware of DNGN Club, as I will say until the day I die, since they came out with Quantum Nobodies, which is a pretty cool little game. This one I really like quite a bit too. You can see it's got that whole 70s retro cassette futurism aesthetic, which is among my favorite aesthetics for sci-fi. I also am a huge fan of like Outrun and Vaporwave type synthwave stuff, but this really hits a really cool spot. So, the game itself is free on itch.io. You can find a link in the description. I don't get an affiliate or anything like that with itch.io. But pick it up, send some cash Jason's way if you're so inclined. I've heard he has a Patreon. I haven't checked it out yet, but I just might soon. So, we'll go through this. You are a void knot. You will need at least one 6-sided die. There's foreshadowing to that right here. And the payoff to that foreshadowing is on page 2. Pretty cool. So, 2 core stats, brains and brawn, and a third generated by your class. So right away, I've been reading this book, and I contacted the author. So, I'll clarify, it's not my first look. I'm saying it more as a, hey, we're seeing this game now that it's out recently. We're one of the first people to cover it, I think, on YouTube. Type first look. But right away, the 2 stats, brains and brawn, reminds me a little bit of one of the coolest types of games, lasers and feelings rules games, which if anyone knows me knows I'm a huge fan of that. Except, unlike most lasers and feelings games, because some do, instead of a single number counting for both stats, this is 2 different numbers counting for 2 stats, and then a third. Survival. When you take damage, you reduce a stat of your choice by 1. When a stat becomes 0, you are out of fiction until you recover. This is something I've noticed is common in some of Jason's games. So note that it did not say when both stats or when all stats become 0 until you are out of fiction until you recover. It's 1. Knocking one stat down to 0 knocks you out of contention for a while. Saves. Anytime you're attempting something risky, it's called a save. Roll a d6 against the applicable stat. If the roll is equal to or less than your current stat, you succeed. A 1 is a critical success, and a 6 is a critical failure. And then you have an oxygen stat, which is kind of like death in space among those. But I'll say that Jason's games, this one, and then also especially DNGN Dragon, reminds me not only of Lasers and Feelings, but also the 2400 system by Jason Tachi. If you've ever seen those, they're a bunch of loosely connected, unconnected, sometimes very connected, small RPG games. And they have some rules similarities with these. Not in a great deal, but like the design ethos of them and the simplicity, I feel like there's probably some inspiration there. as well. And then also a bit maybe even from ICRPG by Runehammer. But we'll see that going through. So, you can get a random class. What's interesting here, I like when everything is not standard. 33% chance of getting a pilot, 33% chance of getting a spacer, 16.5% chance of getting a Psydroid, which is a cyborg, and 16.5% chance of getting an outsider, which is your stand-in for a Jedi. So you'll notice everyone's got brains, everyone's got brawn, and then everyone's got a third class, or rather, skill. So in the case of the spacer, that starts pretty darn high. Stays made in zero-G environments have advantage. So this fella's going to want to get out in the void all the time so they can just keep winning. However, they've got low brains and brawn to compensate for that. So they're still going to want to be careful. Everyone gets a boon, a free starship action. It's free in that we'll get to it, but I think starship actions are special things you can make your ship do, and they usually come at a cost of, I think, reducing one of your stats, or maybe reducing one of the ship's stats. Same thing here with free cybernetic action for the Psydroid. It reduces your cybernetic skill, I think, each time you use it. And then the psionic ability of the outsiders. They're like Jedi powers. And then everyone gets a free item as well. So, again, Spacer, Esper suit failing a save in 0G doesn't reduce your O2. So, in a lot of ways, they're just at home, out in the vacuum. And that sounds pretty cool. Outsider, see, insanely, they seem overpowered at first, I think. But there's, ways in your story to kind of negate that as well. The psionics, they deplete as you use them, if I remember right. I think your psionics skill goes down each time you do. So, like the spacer, who is very situational and rules in space, they can stay in space all day. The outsider, they start out pretty hot, and they do stay hot here, but they're not, always going to be in charge of the situation. So, love these little icons. You roll your starting gear, but you have to read the fine print, okay? You start with a D3 melee weapon, a void suit, and then roll twice and pick one of what you roll. So you know what? Let's just make us a character. How's that sound? Rock Jones dice roller. Dog stuff. Alright. Okay. So first. Oh. Did they take that down? Did they take it down? Oh, you guys. Oh, man. That was like my favorite online dice roller. Okay, well, what class did we get? We got a Psydroid. I'm sorry. It's a little bummed here. Control C. Control V. Oh. Oh. Well, it's my wonky laptop keyboard. So, let's see. Brains, bronze, cybernetics, spoon. You know what? We'll get to the cyberware when we see it, but I've got some ideas for a character. Okay, and then what's our gear? 3 and 6. So we can get a laser blaster with infinite ammo, or a med pack. Nano machines make a brain save on a successful heal. Save one stat point. You know what? We've already got a weapon, so sure. So, what I like about this, you get random personalities. Oops. Let's do all three there. 2, 6, 1. Fear, isolation. Okay. Flaw, other. My vice is booze. Okay, so painting minis. Yeah, so I try and keep my games JRPG, so I wouldn't necessarily go for that, but sure. Let's say painting minis. This is vice. Yeah. What was that vice again? Other. So not violent, not a liar, not a thrill seeker, not rude, not dumb. Oh, it's flaw. Leaning into your flaw. Okay, so yeah. How they work, when you face your fear, you have disadvantage. So when he's alone, he's not doing so well. If he acts in a way that's personally flawed in a certain way, then he gets advantage on the roll, and then indulging in your vice heals you. So let's see. A flaw I get to choose myself. Something other. And it's got to be like a self-destructive way to act. Oh. Does not care for self. There we go. And then vice. Let's just do painting minis for now. So, when a stat is reduced to 0, you're out of fiction until aided or otherwise healed. Last stand, you can choose to be permanently taken out of fiction in a blaze of glory, drastically shifting the narrative in the crew's favor. Roll up a new character and jump back into the story ASAP. Well, you've seen how fast you can make a character. You know, if you have 5 or 6 dice, you can drop them all and you've got your character. I'm taking it slower because we're kind of going over this for the purpose of like a review and look. But that's nice. The last stand rule comes, I know it's present at least in DNGN and DNGN, and it may be in Jason's other games, but I haven't really read any of the others besides Quantum Nobodies, and I don't recall it in that. Danger zones. Sometimes an environment or situation is so dangerous that every moment counts. Well, in these danger zones, every time you fail a save, you must reduce a stat by 1. Okay. So you don't, under normal circumstances, have to take damage, but in a dangerous place, you do. Recovering, tracks and cycles. If you spend a full cycle resting, each stat heals 1 point. Advancements. Now, this is where I talk to Jason online on Itch. Each time you complete a contract, you can choose one. Gain a new stat related to the last adventure with a starting value of 2. Okay. Increase an existing stat by 1. Max of 5. Gain a new connection that grants either mechanical or narrative perk. So, I had asked why we would choose to gain a new stat with a starting value of 2 when increasing, and you'll notice here, you might come to this too. Every stat here starts at least at 2. So if you're like a spacer, you know, your 2 minimum stats here are 3 or 2. You could get a new stat at 2. Let's just say we get underwater basket weaving, right? Now, if we didn't have the underwater basket weaving skill, we would probably use brains anytime we needed to do some underwater basket weaving. And brains are already at 2. For someone else, brains are already higher than that. So I asked, why you would kind of choose something that would make you worse or more specialized when it doesn't need to be. And the answer was, of course, that stats also act as HP, so you're kind of buffing yourself up a bit, and that makes enough sense to me. So, that's what you do. Me personally, I think I would probably just beeline for, my 2 regular stats, because why not? But that's just me. And I love flowcharts. Jason's good at making flowcharts. There's one here. There's one in Dungeon plus Durgan. Sorry for mispronouncing your game, Jason. On your turn, you can move a short distance and take an action. The players go first unless ambushed. Now, this rule kind of here blends in, so I wanted to highlight it, because you might not have noticed that. It's different. This is not, this little flowchart thing is not related to, like, a combat round, but this is the overall story. So, you find a job, you travel, you do the job, you go back to the spaceport, blow off steam, find a job. Pretty standard stuff. Whenever a new scene starts, there's a 1 in 6 chance of encountering something interesting. This increases by 1 for each subsequent scene without an encounter. Not bad. Not bad at all. If triggered, roll 2d6. If they're both odd, you're an NPC, both even an enemy, split an obstacle or resource, and then you apply these criteria, odds, even, or split, to the value that you get here. A hostile NPC, a dangerous hazard, indifferent NPC, minor obstacle, friendly NPC, useful resource. So, rolling high is better, and you'll notice, for instance, within this range, 9 can be made of, well, it has to be made of an odd and an even split because it's an odd number, but 10 can be made from both even or both odd. 11 can only be made from a split, and 12 can only be made from an even. So, within this range, you have the option of getting an NPC, an enemy, or an obstacle or resource. I liked that the math checks out on that. 6, 7, 8, you can get from a split, the 6, or 2 evens, or 2 odds. 7, you can only get from... no, you can't. You can get it from both. My bad. Yeah, you can only get it from split. And then 8, you can only get from 2 evens because of how high the value is. So, if no encounter is triggered, have them describe something interesting they see and do as time passes. Reward creativity with gear, loot, and boons. See this right here? That's great. No empty scenes. Hate that. Contracts. You get a credit score that's measured in dice, which I personally hate as a game designer, making economic systems. In my game, cash is always like its own stat, or it's like a state that you have, such as advantage or disadvantage. When you're rolling rich, you've got advantage to purchase things. Or it'll be something else like that. This isn't quite the same as the system that Jason has in DNGN plus Dragon, but it's pretty good. The one in DNGN plus Dragon is one I've actually done something similar in games too, and I really like. And this one's good too. So your credit to score decreases as you abstractly use resources, depending on your location. At a spaceport, pit stop, space station, or any other inhabited place, your score decreases by 1 at the end of each cycle, or at the end of each day. This makes sense. You're in civilization, everyone wants something from you, everything costs something. When you're traveling or on a contract, your score decreases once every 3 cycles, or 3 days. Your credit score acts as your key to the Void's economy if your CS meets or exceeds the value of a good or service you can obtain it. So you're rolling them as a dice pool. For example, refueling your ship might require a modest CS2, while gaining entry to an exclusive High Rollers Club could demand a substantial CS10. Remember, and this I love, you don't spend CS, rather it automatically grants access. So, starships and space battles. They're instant, right? Here's a range chart, which is cool because it shows what you can do. You have to get this close to board, this close to hail, this close to scan, but as you get closer, the damage that you'll take, see, it increases from the enemies. All ships are equipped with some form of weapon. Yeah, once a ship is out of your scanning radius, you've evaded it. So this is something that you need to note, though. Ship damage is tracked abstractly. Rather than the ship taking damage, the crew takes damage to their stats, which they may divide as they see fit. So 3d6 right here, right? So I'm going to help you out with some math here. At scanning range, you're going to take an average of 3.5 damage. Round it up to 4 to play on the safe side. At hailing range, every time this gets thrown, you're going to take an average of 7 damage. And here, you're going to take an average of 11 damage, but you can take up to 18 damage. Consider that if you've got a crew of, let's say, 4 people, and they're just starting out, we've got 9, 9, 10, and the outlier here, 13. Oh, excuse me, I'm being approached by my dog. But basically, one really bad roll can start to bork your people over. Because, again, when a single stat gets down to 0, your character is out of fiction. So you don't really have 9 to work with, right? You've got, in this case, 3 on your pilot, because you want to keep this starship as high as possible. Since in a starship battle, the pilot's going to be the one, taking care of everything with their roll. So they will have 3 hits before they're taken out of action. The spacer will have 2 hits, because let's hope that your ship doesn't have 0G, or doesn't have artificial gravity. That keeps you at your most effective. The Sidroid, again, depending on what your cybernetics are, you might want to keep this stat high, or you might want to get to your Bronze Brain. And then the Outsider, depending, may not be able to use their psionics as much, so they can keep their brains and brawn high. But generally, getting close into boarding range is a very, very dangerous... Oh, that's right. During ship-to-ship combat, you're not taken out of the fiction when a stat reaches 0. Instead, you enter danger zone. So, again, I read this book, and I forgot that part. And I'm glad, because if people are dropping with every single hit, you're not going to last very long. However, it still does not take much. A round or 2 within boarding range without getting over, like if you're the pirates, you're gonna feel it. Generally, you want to run from these ships. If you have a stat that reaches 0, you're in a danger zone. And if you recall, that means taking damage whenever you fail. So it's a cascade effect. Gosh, I love that. Starship actions. During ship-to-ship conflicts, each player can take a starship action. Each action can only be taken once a turn. Punch it. Make a save. On a success, move all ships one zone further away from you. That's what your pilot's probably going to be wanting to do every single time. Laser turrets. Make a save. On a success, you'll deal damage to the ship based on what zone it's currently in. Yes, you fire back at the same rate, but remember, you're squishier than the bad guys. Reroute power, make a save. On a success, choose a Starship action. The next time that action is taken, its save is made with advantage. On a failure, take 1 damage. You probably want someone else besides the pilot to be doing it. You probably want a spacer to be your chief engineer, floating around in 0G, doing his stuff so that he gets advantage to keep the pilot being able to punch it. Modify the phase variance, make a save. On a success, subtract 1d6 from the next time the ship takes damage. That's a good one. Prime the jump drive, make a save. After 3 cumulative successes in battle, your ship warps out of conflict to relative safety. So, I do feel that prime the jump drive and punch it probably, similar, because once you're out of scanning range here, which, let's say you start at boarding range, that's assuming a lot. You probably start with inhaling or scanning range, unless you're just not looking or you've got like a stealth ship coming up on you. It'll only take 1 or 2 successes to get yourself to a range where they can't see you, and you get to stay in your whatever system you're in. Tractor beam, make a save. On a success, you pull a ship 1 range closer to your ship. Evasive maneuvers, make a save. On a success, you dodge the next attack and don't lose your next action. So, as you can see, this game is geared. Most games that I review here tend to have a solo component. There's no solo component for this one, and I'd love to come up with a third-party supplement for it. But you can see how the power of teamwork helps in here. You're going to want someone, in most scenarios, unless you're really attacking and acting as a pirate, someone always punching it, someone generally rerouting power, taking evasive maneuvers. So, and then someone else probably modifying the phase variance. 3 to 4 players is a sweet spot. The more you have, the more damage you can take. And now here we're getting into the psionics and cyberware. I don't remember as much from this, because it's been a day since I've read it. Psionic special psychic powers that only affect organics and are governed by the psionic stat. You can take a number of psionic actions equal to your current psionics score each cycle. That's right, so the skill itself doesn't go down. But you can only take up to 5 psionic actions each day. And if you take damage to that stat, that reduces the max you can do as well. Cyberware, special implant that can only affect non-organic machines and is governed by the cybernetic stat. You can take 1 cybernetic action each scene for free. Each additional cybernetic action in the same scene reduces your current stat by 1. Using your abilities. When you use an ability, make a save versus the appropriate stat. On a success, describe the outcome, its appearance, and its effects. On failure, you lose your action and gain disadvantage on your next save. The strength of the effect depends on your current positioning. Disadvantage, the ability does a short and minor effect. The ability can harm or heal 1 target for 1d6. Neutral, the ability has an average effect that can last 1d6 turns. The ability can affect 1d6 targets and harm or heal them for 2d6. Advantage, the ability has an empowered effect that can last until you choose this action again. The effect can harm or heal any targets for 3d6. Adversarial encounters. Unless dodged, all enemy attacks automatically hit. I was waiting to spring that one on you guys. I like that. Adversaries always take actions that make the most sense and work toward their goals. When in doubt, have them take the most dramatic action possible or roll below. And if you roll power attack for 3d6, cannot be dodged. Now, this, I believe, is different than, or I would rule if I was playing, is different than the damage in a spaceship, because spaceship says that the damage is governed by the range of their attacks, rather than this matrix here. That said, yeah, Adversaries in combat have 1d6 HP for each player. Obstacles, traps, and entire encounters themselves can be given HP this way as a way to track progress with the player's actions dealing damage as they succeed. I like that type of rule. I've done that in the past too, where every form of opposition has HP, or in other words, has some sort of progress that you must make against it. Hostile ships have a number of hit points equal to the threat they pose to the players. Low, 1d6 per player. Medium, 2d6 per player. High, 3d6 per player. So 3d6 HP per player. And because you want to be able to take those actions, evade, reduce the incoming damage, make sure that you're rolling with advantage to punch it and get away. You want 4 right there, so you're looking at 12d6 of HP. An average of 36, but potentially as high as 72 HP. Now, you need to check this because they don't explain advantage or disadvantage before. If you play a lot of RPGs, advantage and disadvantage generally in the last 10 years have come to mean roll an additional die of whatever type you're doing, take, if it's advantage, the better result, if it's disadvantage, the worst result. And because up here, disadvantage, neutral, and advantage have defined effects, if you hadn't read the glossary, you might have thought that that's the extent of disadvantage or advantage. But that's not the case. So, it's very good that this glossary is included here. This is one thing I've wondered about, because Psi-droids do count as organics, but also cyberware can only affect non-organic machines. So I think that the intent, and I can't speak to it because I am not Jason Panic, but I think the intent there basically means cybernetics, like whatever's custom made for that. Like, you could describe your Psi-droid as a bioorganic construct, non-organic machine, but it does have some organic components to it. So, in that case, let's say our dude, our cyberware is going to be jet legs. Just burst of speed when he needs it. Inspired by Death in Space. Good game. Alien RPG, I don't have much experience with it. Mothership, I would play Instant Starship in any situation where people would recommend Mothership. I would choose Instant Starship over it. I just like it that much better. No Man's Sky, I can see that. I feel like this game could use a really good random generator for some procedural generation, contract generation, and so forth, system generation, because it doesn't have that, and I'm all about that. Star Wars, I can see it. Star Trek, I can see it a little too. Blade Runner, I can definitely see it. So, good game. I really recommend you get it. I think I'm going to get some more Dungeon Club games and maybe show them to you as well. Hope you guys have fun, and I'll talk to you later.